Hi kids! If you're a subscriber, welcome back. If you're new here, welcome to my channel. My name is Miss Ashade and I am here to help you with English home language and first additional language. It's been a little while since I posted anything, and that's because your favorite English teacher got a job. So I started last week and it's been quite a hectic and exciting week. So I've had limited time to record and to upload, but I'm still here to help you out with your English subject needs. So do the right thing, like, comment, share with your classmates and your friends. And if you're not already subscribed, then please do the right thing and subscribe. So let's get into this video. I will talk to you guys later. Bye. All right, let's focus on literary techniques and devices for this video. This is supposed to help you with some of the techniques and the devices that are used by your poets, your writers, especially in novels, etc. So the ones that you learn about now could come up when you are studying your novel for the year or your play for the year, as well as your poems for the year. When looking at literary techniques and poetic devices that are used by our writers, a couple things we need to understand. First of all, these are elements that are used by our writers to convey meaning for their writing to the readers. And because we know how writers are, lyricists are, poets, etc., they tend to use complicated or complex language, but it's to add flair to their writing, and you need to understand these techniques and these devices that they use in order to figure out what they're saying. Then the second thing is you need to understand that not all the techniques or the devices will appear in all poems or even works of literature. You may have sonnets, for instance, that use iambic pentameter, which contributes to the rhythm, the pattern of the poem. But you may have free verse poems that use no rhyme scheme, no rhythm, no particular pattern. You will have some poems that use figures of speech as a device, while others maybe don't use any. And that's perfectly fine. You just need to be able to identify these literary techniques so that a poem or a novel or a paragraph or a chapter is easier to understand. Then something else that we need to pay attention to when looking at the techniques or the tools or the elements that are used by writers, I've included some of them and I will define them for you. Form and structure, figures of speech, imagery, rhythm, repetition, tone, mood, diction, as well as theme. So in the next slide, we'll get into some of these in more detail. For definitions, I'm only going to look at some of these techniques and devices because there are those that you should have knowledge of. So an example being figures of speech. If I were to define figures of speech, I would also have to give further definitions of the different figures of speech. So I'd have to define, for instance, a metaphor, a simile, personification, etc. And that would take forever. So if you haven't learned these already, or you need refreshing on them, guys, Google is a thing, hey? But rather comment and then I can figure out if it's necessary for me to do a separate video on figures of speech for poetry and literary works. So the first one that I want to look at would be form and structure. Form and structure is the way in which a poem is organized. So when we are looking at the organization of a poem, we mean looking at the number of lines, any rhyming rhythm or even meter that creates some sort of a pattern or a beat, as well as the lengths of our stanzas. So if there is a rhyming scheme, for instance, that could make a sonnet, or if there is no rhyme scheme and there is no particular rhythm, then maybe we're looking at a free verse poem. If we have a poem that has, I think it's 3 lines, where you have line 1 has 5 syllables, line 2 has 7 syllables, and line 3 has 5 syllables, that makes a haiku, which is another type of poem. So you have to pay attention to those kinds of things. Then the next thing I want to look at is imagery. This I cannot stress enough, I cannot emphasize enough. Imagery is incredibly important. The reason why it's so important is because this is when your writer provides some sort of a vivid description that appeals to your senses as the reader. So the senses that I'm talking about are the 5 senses that you learned about in primary school: your sight, smell, touch, sound, and the sense of feel. So when our writers try to appeal to these senses, it means that they are using imagery in order to convey some sort of an idea or a message, etc. Now, you need to pay attention to the diction that is used. So that would be the words that have been used by a writer to figure out, has there been any imagery used in this particular line, stanza, or poem? I'll take a look at an example now. But first, let me look at an example of form or structure. This poem, Sonnet 18 by William Shakespeare, if you are in grade 10, you will be tackling it this year. Grade 11 and 12, you've probably dealt with this poem before, but when we look at the structure of this particular poem, we are looking at, first of all, the number of lines. How many lines is it? And if you are to count, you'll find that it is made up of 14 lines. Then when we look at the stanzas, we find that it is actually split into 4 stanzas, the first 3 being quatrains, meaning 4-line stanzas, and then the final stanza at the bottom here is called a rhyming couplet. And as you can see, it is indented to show that it is a little bit separate from the rest of the poem. So this is what we pay attention to. We also look at any rhyming that happens. So if we look at certain words, the last word of each line helps me to figure out the rhyme scheme. So the first one here is day, then we have temperate, May, and we have date. So the rhyme scheme of the first stanza is A, B, A, B. Right, so that's basically what I wanted to look at in terms of structure. I'm looking at how many lines is this poem? 14 lines. How many stanzas do I have? I have 4 stanzas, but what I found out is there are 3 stanzas that are quatrains, and the last stanza at the bottom is a rhyming couplet, and it also has its own particular rhyme scheme, which is GG in this case. That's why they call it a rhyming couplet. Those 2 lines rhyme with one another. Then when we look at imagery, an example of imagery, I have here, after the long run, he collapsed in the grass with tired and burning muscles. The grass tickled his skin and sweat cooled on his brow. Here we have a few sentences that appeal to our senses. So it's telling us about the muscle strain he experiences. So burning muscles, we can almost feel that sensation of burning muscles after we have ran or after we've exercised. I think we've all been there. We also have another example of a sense being touch rather, where the line tells us that grass tickled his skin, and that shows us how the grass actually touched his skin. And we also find another example of touch where sweat cooled on his brow, and that feeling of a cooling sweat on his brow. So these appeal to certain senses, and as you can see from these couple sentences, not all the senses are appealed to. So that happens in poetry as well. It happens in a chapter or a paragraph or an extract of something that you may be reading, that not all the senses will be appealed to. All right, moving along. Rhythm is the beat and the pace of a poem. So, in order to figure this one out, you need to pay attention to the syllables of the words that have been used. Syllables, you should know what syllables are by now, but just in case you forgot, or I don't know. Syllables are the different parts of a word. So, if you think about your own name, when you say your name, it has separate parts. So I am, like I've told you, Miss Ashade. So if we look at my name, Ashade, Ashade, it has three parts to it, meaning three syllables to it. So an example of rhythm is iambic pentameter. Iambic pentameter in a line of poetry gives you five short unstressed syllables, followed by five long stressed syllables, which are paired together. So in total, in one line of poetry, you would have 10 syllables, where you have a short unstressed paired with a longer stressed syllable. An example, going back to that poem, that sonnet, very famous one by William Shakespeare, Shall I Compare Thee to a Summer's Day? When we look at the very first line of the poem, it indicates to us that there is a rhythm in the rest of the poem, using iambic pentameter. So as you can see, I have little U symbols here and slash symbols over my syllables or my words. The U symbol indicates an unstressed syllable, while the slash indicates a stressed syllable. So it creates a bada, 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 or da-dum, da-dum, da-dum type of rhythm, where one syllable, like shall, is short and is said in a short manner, and I is actually stressed, so it sounds like a longer syllable. So let me try to say this line as best as I can. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? So that's how we find rhythm in a poem. So sonnets, a lot of sonnets contain iambic pentameter, and that rhythm contributes to its structure. I hope you can remember what I said about form and structure. Then other things that we need to know about literary techniques and devices. Tone. Tone is important because your writer is trying to convey a particular attitude, feeling, or emotion towards his subject matter, the topic he is discussing, or even the reader. If I am writing an article that is directed to non-believers of climate change, my words will have a particular tone to them. I may use a bit of sarcasm to almost make fun of those who do not believe in climate change or global warming. Um, so you need to pay attention to the diction that has been used, because it indicates to you what the writer is feeling or what his attitude is towards his subject matter or his topic or the reader. Just like Shall I Compare Thee to a Summer's Day has quite a loving tone, because he is saying all these beautiful things about his beloved. So his subject matter is completely different from the article that is talking about climate change. I hope you're getting what I'm talking about and the light bulb is switched on in your brain. And mood is also related to tone in the sense that it has to do with feelings and emotions, but the mood or atmosphere is actually the reader's emotional response. So, how we feel as readers when we read what someone has written. So, although they may seem similar, they are in fact different. So here are examples of tone and mood, and the similarity about these two, tone and mood, is that they're usually described, or the way in which we describe them is by using an adjective. So sad, worried, optimistic, assertive, frightening, cheerful, hopeful, humorous. We're using adjectives in order to describe the reader's attitude or his feelings, or to describe the reader's emotional response to what he is reading or watching, listening to, etc. Think about when you watch a horror movie. There's a particular tone that the director or the filmmaker is trying to convey through visuals, and there is a particular mood or atmosphere that you experience as the audience member as you are watching these. The second last literary technique or device that I want to look at is a theme, which is incredibly important because it is the underlying message communicated by an author. In your tests, exams, and even activities, your teachers will assess you on your understanding of a novel or a poem by questioning what you know about the themes of this piece of writing. So it might be an essay question, it might be a short question, but you need to be able to explain the theme by also using examples from your work of literature. So importantly, you have to understand that it is usually a short statement. When we identify the theme, it should be in the form of a short statement because one word is not specific or even detailed enough. Um, you cannot say that Romeo and Juliet, the theme of that play is love. You are not being specific enough when you say love. Are you referring to the love between a couple? Are you referring to how love can overcome certain struggles? Are you talking about the love that occurs between a child and his or her parents? You need to be more specific because it then demonstrates your understanding of what you have read. So, an example that I've provided here is a theme from Things Fall Apart, a novel by Chinua Achebe, which some of our grade 11s are studying this year. So the theme that I'm focusing on is the struggle between change and tradition. As you notice, this is a statement. And this statement tells you exactly what we mean by the theme. We're not just looking at change on its own, we're not just looking at tradition on its own, we are looking at the relationship between the two and how there is a struggle there when traditions are compromised by change. So please, 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 please do yourself a favor and remember to talk about your themes in the form of a statement. And when you elaborate on the theme or you explain it, you use evidence from whatever you have read, your poem, your novel, your play, etc. The evidence has to come from whatever you have read or studied in class, in school, etc., because you don't want to be getting your answers from the air. Right, then the last one that is also very important is actually it is related to most of these techniques and these devices that we have discussed. So how does a writer achieve all of this? How does he achieve imagery? How does he achieve conveying the theme? How does he achieve conveying his tone? How is it achieved that the reader feels a particular emotion? It is all through diction. So diction is incredibly important because this is the selection or the choice of words by a writer or a poet or a lyricist. So the words that have been used by a writer are used for a specific purpose. They either are meant to give impact or to teach a lesson or to emphasize something or to convey a theme, to convey a tone, to convey a mood, etc. So very important. It is very important. Sorry, it is incredibly important that we look at the choice of words that have been used by a writer. So here's an example of an African proverb, Moroccan specifically, where it says, "There is no beauty but the beauty of action." Instead of saying simply, "Take action," the diction is more figurative, it is more poetic, it has more emphasis, it has more beauty, it has more oomph. um you can say that it has multiple things, but instead of just saying simply take action, this proverb tells the reader that action is actually, it's beautiful. There's nothing more beautiful than the beauty of taking action. So the words that have been used are important. Writers don't simply use words because they were bored. Yes, some of the words that they use won't appeal to you, and that's perfectly fine. But words are chosen and used for a purpose. There is an intention. Think about when you write your essays. You write your narrative essay, your descriptive essay, your argumentative essay, or you write a letter of complaint, a letter to the editor, a diary entry. You use particular diction because you have a purpose or an intention. So that's exactly what our poets, our writers, our playwrights are doing. So I hope that this has helped you to understand literary techniques a little bit better. Keep coming back to this video as much as you need to. It's available to you, so that you can use it. Literary techniques will help you to tackle your novel, play, or drama, the poetry that you are studying this year, and most importantly, knowing these literary techniques and these devices will help you to deal with or to tackle paper 2, which is your literature paper, during your June exam and your final exam. So I hope this has helped you out a little bit. I will see you in my next video. Bye.